Developing this, our government makes desperate appeal to retired nurses and midwives to volunteer assistance to public healthcare institutions pending resolution of an impasse which has crippled the healthcare sector.
Also, the Tsar, as the controversy over the Dumsor levy rages, we compare it with the repealed E-levy and ask which places the heavier burden on Ghanaians, and that's on By the Numbers a lot later.
Also to come, Ghana confirms 34 more cases of Mpox, bringing the total number of recorded cases in the country to 79.
Hello there, welcome to yet another afternoon with the both of us here on News Central. I am Mawina Egbeka.
And I am Kamini Aman. On News Central starts right now.
This afternoon, the Health Minister, Kwabena Mintah-Kando, is making a passionate appeal to retired nurses and midwives to volunteer services at various hospitals and clinics which have been deserted by striking members of the Ghana Registered Nurses and Midwives Association. Now, during a press conference at the Jubilee House a while ago, the minister announced that government has directed the Ministry of Finance to collaborate with the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission to develop a roadmap for implementing a process to address the demands of the striking nurses and midwives.
Government wishes to stress its readiness to further engage with a view to implementing the conditions of service in a manner that does not dislocate the national budget. We wish to draw attention to the fact that the conditions of service under reference are not captured in the 2025 budget and will completely throw the economy off gear if implemented immediately in the manner it currently exists. We are mindful of the serious economic consequences of unbudgeted expenditure and want to avoid the economic slippages that led to the hardship in the recent past. Government commits to continue to engage with the nurses in order to achieve a mutually acceptable outcome in the interest of the public. While working around the clock to resolve the impasse, the Ministry of Health has taken the following steps to mitigate the suffering of Ghanaian patients unduly affected by the strike. The ministry will in the next few minutes publish a comprehensive list of facilities to complement facilities where nursing services are lacking and where patients can seek health care. Given the urgency of the situation and suffering of the patients, government appeals to public-spirited retired nurses and midwives to volunteer their services for a brief period pending the resolution of the impasse. We further express our deep appreciation to practicing nurses who have opted to remain at post to help suffering patients and urge others to show similar fellow feeling and assist our ailing compatriots, even as efforts are made to address their concerns. Government reiterates its commitment to dialogue with the GRMA with a view to resolving this impasse for full nursing services to be.
That's the Health Minister. Well, on his part, Deputy Finance Minister Thomas Nyakwampim urged the striking nurses and midwives to have faith in government as it works to resolve the impasse.
Thank you. I don't want to describe any act as an ambush or any deliberate attempt at government or whatever. I think that our nurses are pushing for what they want. It is for us as government to also look at what can be accommodated within the budget. And you will all appreciate the fact that it's a new government that took over. And we have been confronted with many, many, many things. We have to balance everything and ensure that the economy is not thrown out of gear. We have a lot of debt that we need to, we have been confronted with. And so, in as much as I appreciate what our nurses do and what they are demanding. We also want them to have faith in the current administration that we mean well, and we are committed to ensure that we have a fair wage for what they do for all of us. And so let us not describe their action in any way that will mar our attempt to resolve this.
Right now, let's take all of these to Perpetual Oforiampofo. She's the president of the Ghana Registered Nurses and Midwives Association. Thankfully, she's joining us this afternoon here on the bulletin, where we can pick immediate thoughts on what government has been saying and the response of the nurses who've been on strike, the effects biting, and we'll be getting details of for you shortly. Madam, I appreciate you speaking to us this afternoon, far away from Ghana. The government is under pressure. They are appealing to retired nurses and midwives to come back and help shore up the gap you've created. Surely that should be something that in the immediacy moves you and have you consider a return to work.
Thank you very much for having me, and I'm really grateful for this opportunity. You know very well that indeed we started talking about our frustrations with regards to the overly delayed implementation of our collective agreement, not last week, not last 2 weeks, not last month, but from January of this year. And in all those engagements that we had with the Ministry of Health and with the Ministry of Finance, they made us understand that there was a process ongoing for the implementation. All these information that we are receiving now from the meeting we had yesterday with our employers and from the press briefing that has been held by the minister himself, it tells us that it means throughout those follow-ups, all that we were being told were inaccurate information and they were lies. So the point is that nurses and midwives in Ghana deserve to have their collective agreement, which borders on their conditions of service, implemented. We understand it's a new government. That is why even as leaders, from January till somewhere last month, we have been making great excuses for the government. At a point we said, no, this is a new government that has come. Let's wait. A minister of health has not been appointed. Let's wait. A minister of finance has not been appointed. Let's wait. The budget has not been read. Let's wait. We've been given a lot of excuses. And the general membership of the association and the entire fraternity of nurses and midwives have said they are tired of the excuses that we are given. They are working in work settings where other health professionals are benefiting from what they should also be benefiting from. So what stops us from doing the needful? If they are telling us today that there's no room within the budget to cater for what we deserve as nurses and midwives, then they are telling us that they do not value what it is that we do or what we do within the health space. You cannot tell us that within the period of June to December, government is not going to spend. They must make provision in there. And even what we have said is that, yes, if you look at all that we are asking for in terms of the Appendix B, the content of the Appendix B within our collective agreement, we haven't said that, look, implement everything at a go. We are looking at a situation where, for example, you take fuel allowance. We are already taking fuel allowance in terms of our senior grades. Put them on the right rates, which was agreed, which will mean that you are paying up a difference because they are still collecting the old rate. But then once you put them on the new rate, they will be receiving the new rate. And then we can talk about spreading the arrears over a period where you pay them in tranches. Look at uniform allowance. That is a one-time payment.
Right.
We have received, as of last year, the old rate, which means there's a difference to be paid, and the new rate should be paid this year. In paying the new rate this year, you can add on what was not paid last year and pay it at a go. Book and research allowance, for example, is meant for a small number of our people. They are not even up to 1,000. It's not going for every nurse and midwife in the country. And we are saying pay that to them. It's a one-off payment So once we are able to do that, it just gives us room to now sit and look at other things like the on-call facilitation allowance, the rural incentive allowance, and all those allowances that may be contained there. We are very flexible, we are available, we are ready to engage. We don't want anybody making it seem as if the leadership is not ready. Yesterday we were in a meeting. What they told us was that they can only contain the implementation from January of 2026.
Next year. And you find that you find that unacceptable. I want to come
unacceptable.
I want to come to the aspect of your conversation where you say that you had been engaging before the budget was read and all of that, and you pointed out calling the government liars. Who were you engaging between that period upon until the budget was read, and what was the conversation which you had? Reason for which now you're describing all of the conversations as unacceptable?
In fact, we wrote a letter in February 2025. We wrote another letter, official letter, in April 2025. The first one we wrote in February 2025, we're calling on our employers and all those who were actually served the writ in June 2025. And in fact, the section of our people who took us to court actually took not just GRNMA to court, they took the Ministry of Health, the Fair Wages, Ministry of Finance, Attorney General's Department, and others. So we served them this letter and told them that, look, now consent judgment has been given by the courts. Our collective agreement needs to be implemented. The most pressing one at the time was the CPD. Incorporated there was our PIN and iron renewal, which bordered on the legality of our practice. So we started engaging on that. At this moment, I can say that we've been able to have some closure on that, although not so effective. At least the Minister of Health has been very consistent. We have engaged with the Director General of the Ghana Health Service and the Nursing and Midwifery Council on that, and at least we've made a headway on that. If you put that aside, with all the other items within the collective agreement, we kept putting it across in all those meetings that we had that it is very important that we look at the entirety of the collective agreement and get it implemented, because it is of very important essence to all nurses and midwives. To all nurses and midwives
in the country. But there are those who make the argument that the government, even from this press conference this morning, has not denied the importance you serve in our health delivery system. In fact, they've reiterated that countlessly. We had the Deputy Finance Minister who mentioned that he's not going to describe your action as unfair because you're demanding what is due you. There are those who make the argument that give them a bit more time. Your posture and your insistence that all of these be taken care of before you can return to the negotiation table sometimes looks a bit unfair to the government, which is just, what, barely 6 months?
6 months is a long time. It's half a year. It's a long time. But what we have said over and over again is that if you look at the entirety of the collective agreement, there are aspects that need to be implemented at the work area through the IGF. There are aspects that are monitored, needs to be paid through the controller system. There are aspects that we even need to further engage to look at the modalities of its implementation. So what we have said, and I don't know why they are not getting it, that we are not calling for the implementation of the entirety of the collective agreement at this time. But of course, looking at what it is we are experiencing at the work side, we are all health workers. We are all health workers. We negotiated our collective agreement way back and signed it off in May 2024. As of that time, other professionals have not even gone to the negotiation table to negotiate. As we speak, they are all enjoying these same set of conditions of service. So it is not fair to keep us locked out. Those aspects that actually cuts across, implement them for us at this time, and let us continue to engage with other aspects. And let me tell you, the passion with which we work as nurses and midwives have made it increasingly impossible for sometimes for us to take this kind of position in terms of industrial action.
Because right now as we speak, it's biting. In fact, my colleagues have been in and around the country, hospitals here and there, where persons are in desperate need of you nurses and midwives at the respective hospitals. You're speaking to the difficulty in having to arrive at this particular position, but then some will say, look at the patients who, through no fault of theirs, are having to bear the brunt of this decision. Go back to work, return to the negotiation table, have a conversation with government.
The truth of the matter is that, yes, we are nurses, we are midwives, we are compassionate with the care that we give. We know our worth, we know what we bring to the table, we know what it is we bring to the health sector. But let me tell you, at this point in time, we must save ourselves in terms of getting what is due us financially, what is due us and non-financially, to be able to carry ourselves to work. Because, mind you, it is not as if we receive any kind of transport allowance to get to work. Whatever remuneration we receive at the end of the day, we take care of our rent, we take care of our transport, we take care of every need of ours in terms of what our dependents require from us. What is due us needs to be given to us. I was making a point, and you came in earlier. I'm saying that considering that we value our patients and we love them so much, that is why even within this context, I must tell you, in managing the strike, we have even given directives to our regional branches and our leadership, such that in the very critical areas where we have our patients in critical conditions, adult care or pediatric care, we are putting some kind of skeletal staff there. We are allowing them to care for them until such time that their condition is stable.
That's not happening.
At the same time,
I have colleagues who visited the hospital yesterday, and the nurses were not taking care of them. He had a newborn baby who was expected to undergo some specialist treatment. There were no nurses there, and we'll connect with my colleague shortly. This skeletal system you're talking about, presently as we speak, doesn't appear to be on the ground, which is why the minister is appealing to retired nurses to come and save the day.
To tell you the fact that the provision our employer is putting in place will not solve the issue. You see, if you leave student nurses and you leave rotation nurses, those two categories of nurses are supposed to work under supervision from their senior colleagues. Maybe our employer doesn't know the circumstances under which our retirees are working or are at home. And if you are calling them to come and work, probably you don't understand their circumstance.
You think it's not going to work?
Every retiree, unless those who may have retired this year, if you do your nursing job for as many as 30 years or 35 years, by the time you are retiring, you are down with serious backaches, serious knee problems, and all sorts of medical conditions.
So you think,
and at the time they retire, they are taking care of all these medical challenges, still with financial difficulties. And the system doesn't even take care of them. So if you are calling them at this time to come and work, how are they coming to work?
You think
they are not even available to come and work. The solution to this problem is that the Ministry of Finance must find space within the budget to cater for the more pressing issues that we've already communicated to them, so that the rest of the issues we can actually come to some agreements and have them done over time. That is all that we are calling for. Madam, and we cannot begin to give service at that time when we haven't seen any commitment on the part of our employer to actually see to the conclusion of this matter.
I get it that you're not going to budge on this position. It's a hard pill you're deciding to swallow at this point in time. But we get the indication as well that the National Labour Commission has secured a judgment of some sort from the court describing this industrial action as illegal. In fact, a member from the Registered Nurses and Midwives acceded to the fact that they had received the court processes. Surely that begins to compel you to call off this industrial action, doesn't it?
As far as we are concerned, you know, when it comes to this matter, there are technical matters related to it and legal matters related to it. We haven't been served. And it doesn't take all these things to compel us to go back to work.
It will take more than...
I'm telling you that the practitioners themselves are resolute.
Right.
I'm not even going to tell them to go to work and they will get up and go to work. Or the National Council. We are looking at a situation where we can get the most pressing issues within our collective agreement implemented. I've mentioned some of them to you on this call. That is what we are pleading with the Ministry of Finance to look at. Our employer, our mother ministry, the Ministry of Health to look at, so that we can continue to engage on the other issues. We are available. We are available to engage. I may be away, but there's a strong team of leaders in Ghana to engage at any point in time when they are called upon. So it is important that they really look at what they can do immediately and stop talking about implementation in January 2026. It will not help anybody. And I'm telling you, the mitigation systems that have been put in place will not solve the issue. Those issues that are of critical nature and has come to our attention, we have helped to resolve them. At this point in time, I'm telling you, nurses and midwives in Ghana are resolute, and they are not going to budge, even if nursing leadership tells them to do one thing or the other. They are looking forward to having their uniform allowance implemented. They are looking forward to having their fuel allowance implemented. They are looking forward to having their book and research allowance implemented, and all other allowances. But like I said, as leaders, we are ready to sit at the table and have some measures put in place that can help spread the arrears and spread out the implementation, as it were. But to wait till January 2026, it is not a fair way of looking at it. And if that is what the position of the employer is, we are going to tell them squarely that they want to treat us unfairly, and it is not just. They must treat us justly so that we feel we've been treated well to be able to call off this industrial action. I
appreciate you speaking to us, Madam, and I'm hopeful that we can have a conversation again shortly. That's Madam Perpetual Oforiampofo. She's the president of the Ghana Registered Nurses and Midwives Association, speaking to us this afternoon, where she, amongst many other things, says, what, the government is treating them unfairly, Kamini? And indeed, it's a very strong position they've taken, that they are not budging. They are making sure that what is due them is given to them by the government. And she says that nurses, even if they decide based on this court processes we're learning of by the NLC is served on them, because she says it's not been served on them, they are not sure the nurses will hit to their call if they say they should call the industrial action off.
And you know, she mentioned how in certain areas, plans have been made for the nurses to have a lean staff in those areas. So let's check on the ground what our reporters are bringing in. Safua Boaheng is our first stop. She's visited the Mamprobi and Kolebu hospitals. She's joining us now with the very latest. Safua, what can you report?
It's a midwives association strike, which is basically the nurses strike. And just yesterday, we were made aware of the closed-door negotiations that has been going on between the association as well as the Ministry of Health. It ended inconclusively, waiting for a response from the association. But we were also made aware that there was an injunction notice that was served to the association. And so when that happens, we know that due process will follow, which means that the strike will be called off and it will be rescinded. Today we are at the Kolebu Hospital just to find out how the ambience looks like. Do we still have nurses coming in, or they have still not rescinded the strike and therefore we do not have them? I have with me here Alima, who has been here for a very long time this morning just to go through the process. I would like to speak to her so that she gives us more details as to how her visit to the hospital has been with her baby boy. Alima.
I was here this morning with my son for an ENT appointment. The most interesting part of my visit started, the disappointing part started just yesterday, when my appointment date was written as 9th June, Tuesday. Apparently 9th June is Monday. So I called numbers, I wasn't able to get through to anyone. So I had to take chance. I came here yesterday. I was told to come back today. We got here at 5:57 a.m. Because on a regular day, this is a very busy place. You have huge crowds waiting to see the specialist. Unfortunately, I think we're barely about 15 people when the process started till at this time when everyone had already seen the doctor. They started work at 8:37 thereabout, but on a regular day by 7 they would have started work. And I saw the doctors having to reassign themselves to do some of the administrative process, calling out files to get people, directing them where to go to next before they get to talk to.
Which originally should have been the nurses.
The work of the nurses. And again, the regular process of going through a clinic or any health facility is having to go through where they take your vitals. But today, there was nothing like that. So nobody had their vitals taken. You just go make payment and go see the doctor straight. Yeah, so that's what happened. I think it's really exciting that the doctors were patient enough to reassign themselves, being very efficient to see the few people that were here today. But that said, given that the injunction had been served on the nurses, I think it's become illegal for their strike to continue. Perhaps once we don't have visibility of how soon they are going to resume work, for me, I think that maybe in the interim, government might look at recalling some retired nurses, national service personnel, student nurses to probably take charge of some of the activities while these guys are still on strike.
So we are still embarking on tour to various health facilities across the Greater Accra region. We are at Mpox Hospital now, and we are following up on how the ambience and the situation is. Are nurses back to their various posts, or they are still holding on to the industrial action? And so I have with me here one of the women who came here for weighing, and she has a story to tell. Pacho, Edini Ede?
Pacho, from Betty.
Betty, Pacho, Beyede.
Kamedia Kolani ba weighing. Maybe I will be any her nest, ni be any her say. Oma to 2 more dine, a home so I empty, be answer. This I made in the corner because I never know where you I was sent me back last week. But my baby, I am better internet. Near mammy, quite same member. Into me, if you remember, my baby do and so. So, mamba, into this, I miss in the corner. I wouldn't know because I see a mom body. I just almost resume me and I should say.
BBNC but nena me buy say me de me ba ni ba win ba me ba na man be to be enti me kofi. Oh ha me mo because ene mo na say o mo ma me ba ne eyi. O mo ka so me ma na eduru bi e de ato n'enu. Eni nti na me ba enti o ma mba ne so ha me so. Eti e bia nya me bua e kosi Thursday de me ba.
So Letitia has been explaining to me that her 5-month-old baby was supposed to be on weighing so that they also give her some vaccination. But unfortunately, because of the absence of the nurses, she doesn't have any other choice than to go back home. And then later within the week, she will find another time to come and check if the nurses have reported and that they can sort it out. So we are at Mpox Hospital currently, like I mentioned earlier on, and we have interviewed some mothers and patients who have come to the hospital, but they are going back home because the nurses are not around, and so the purpose of their visits has been annulled, and definitely they have to go. So this is what is happening at some of the hospitals that we have visited.
Well, thank you so much for the reporting. We can now head up north, where Christopher Amwako has been observing the second day of the full-blown strike by the members of the Ghana Registered Nurses and Midwives Association. Christopher, yesterday you reported that patients were having difficulty accessing services at the Tamale Teaching Hospital as well as the Salaga hospitals. Talk to us about the situation today.
Kemini, I must say that the situation is still the same. It's even getting worse because as we speak, most people who yesterday were at the some of the hospitals and could not get the full benefit of the services that they required are unable to go again today. Some actually have told me that they were supposed to go for weighing today. You know, weighing over here is mostly done on Tuesdays and Thursdays. You know that when they go for these weigh-ins, they take some vaccinations, injections, and others. Unfortunately, they are unable to go because the ANCs have all are not functional. Now, Kevin, the most pathetic aspect of it is the CHIPS compounds, where some of them have only one midwife, and the absence of the midwife will definitely affect healthcare services in the areas. I have visited one of the CHIP compounds. Even though the midwife was at post, she told me that in case she gets a case, she will have no option than to tell the person that she's on strike, even though she has that human feelings. But they also want their concerns addressed by government. So the situation hasn't changed. It's even getting worse.
How are medical officers, medical doctors, so to speak, handling patients who are in ward and the likes?
Yeah, so you know that some of the association members who are not embarking on this strike are at post. But like I said since yesterday, the numbers are not encouraging. So hospital management have, as it were, encouraged them to work overtime so that they can fill in the gap. But that itself is a challenge because they are unable to attend to the number of people who visit the various health facilities. The doctors and the hospital management have one issue, and that government should address the concerns of these aggrieved nurses so that they will be back at post for them to continue the delivery of services.
Indeed, and Christopher, we know that in the last hours of the morning, the government addressed the press, by extension, the country, and it says that it cannot do anything at this time about the demands of the nurses because, it's not captured in the budget and there's no money for it at this moment. It also appealed to retired nurses to return to the fold. Talk to us about how management of the hospitals you have visited are responding to this.
Yes, so one of them actually, in fact, one of the nurses belonging to the other unions or associations that are at post have told me that, look, this call for retirees and other volunteers to come and support, it's not something that will help. Government should intensify its call for negotiations. That is what will help. For them, the retirees already are tired and they are home. And so they cannot do much. So, for instance, you go to rural communities where there's not even a retiree. How are they able to come in and support? So they are saying that government should rather focus on negotiating with the aggrieved members of the Ghana registered nurses and midwives so that they can reach an agreement rather than making those comments of getting retirees and other volunteers to come in, because they believe that once the concerns of the Ghana registered nurses and midwives are addressed, their concerns will also be addressed. Because, in the first place, they all have the same concerns. It's just that other groups feel left out in the negotiation. And so they are also praying that the concerns of this one should be addressed so that they can also push for theirs to be addressed.
I see. Christopher, we'll leave it here. Thank you so much for the reporting. Christopher Mwako is our Northern and Savannah regions correspondent. You're so live here on News Central. There's more from the health sector when we come back from this break, because the question is, why do we continue to see increasing number of Mpox cases despite assurances from the Ghana Health Service? Now the total number in the country is 79. More on that when we return.
And you're welcome back here on News Central. Like we told you, we're zooming in next on Mpox because the country has confirmed 34 new cases of the disease, bringing the total number of recorded cases in the country to 79. 4 persons are on admission and under observation while contact tracing continues. The current trends and the increase in cases has heightened concerns within the populace, but authorities maintain there's no cause for alarm. And let's go straight onto the telephone lines right now and speak to the Director, Public Health at the Ghana Health Service, Dr. Frank Asiedu-Bekwai, has joined us via phone. Doc, I appreciate you speaking to us this afternoon. The numbers keep increasing, but you at the Ghana Health Service maintain there's no cause for alarm. These increasing numbers, where are we seeing them from? Are they from the contacts we've traced?
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon to your viewers. So, the cases that are coming, I will say that they come across, for now, they are 10 regions. But then I think that when we made the initial discussion, we projected that now that we're able to establish an outbreak, and we have clear case definitions, and we have clear ways of identifying cases, we expect cases to be reported. So for us, our pointers are we getting cases that are delayed? 1. Are we getting cases that are severe? 2. Are we getting cases that die? So those are I'll say, our adverse pointers that we're looking for. What we're hoping for is that people should come in early. People.
Hello, Doc. Are you still with us?
Oh. Hello.
Yeah. Yes, we lost you just briefly. You said what is most important in all of this is people should do something. We lost you there.
What I'm saying is that we are not just looking at the numbers. We are looking at when are people reporting. Are they coming in delayed? In that case, our intervention is not working. Right. Are they coming here severely ill? In that case, our interventions are not working. Are they dying? For now, we are not seeing that. So clearly, it tells us that we are actually trying to get what we want to do. So we are still continuing to advocate that we should all get to let the Ghanaian understand that we have an outbreak, which is Mpox, and then it's spread by contact. When you have contact with somebody who has an infected rash. So for now, we expect that we're going to see some cases, but what we are fighting for is not to get cases that come in delayed, that will come in severely ill, that may die. And I think that's the picture we want to communicate to Ghanaians. So let's not be so much worried about the numbers, though we are concerned. But don't say that when we have more cases, it means that it's out of our no. The issue is that if they are coming delayed, then it's a concern. Then things are not reaching the average Ghanaian.
Right. Doc, where are we currently when it comes to conversations about vaccines and the rollout of possible vaccines against Mpox?
Yes, so there's a vaccine for Mpox, but let me say that it's limited in terms of quantity. So what the directive is, or the criteria is, 1, which people are more likely to get Mpox, and then they tend to have 2 main persons. So 1 is a health worker, but the health worker is well protected by wearing the right PPE. Is kind of protected. 2, then the people who have multiple sexual partners or indulge in what they call risky behavior. So those are another group, and then the other one is people who have been exposed. So what for us we are looking at is, are we able to identify a unique group? And I'll say that for now we are still working on it to be able to be sure that we have this unique group. And then now we are engaging, fine-tune our vaccination criteria. But I don't want to say that vaccines are across board, so people should ignore the preventive measures. For the key message is prevention. Prevent yourself from getting infected.
Right. Doc, just finally on the numbers. Are we to expect a further increase in the number of persons who contract the disease? I ask this because that will then allay the minds of many Ghanaians that from the perspective of the Ghana Health Service, we're perhaps expecting to see a lot more persons before it begins to plateau.
Yeah, so, let's say the first 2 cases, there was a delay of about 2-3 weeks before they came to the hospital. So these persons will actually have gotten people into contact. So you realize that of all these delayed in cases, all these people, some of them will come out as cases and also following contact tracing. So what we project is that you're going to see some cases, higher cases, over the next maybe a week or two. But then what we don't expect to see is still delayed in reporting. What we don't expect to see is people who are coming very ill. What we don't expect to see is people who are dying. And I think that those are the pointers we are working on as a service. Hopefully, after maybe 2 or 3 weeks, we expect the case to be going down by rate.
Right then, Doc. I will leave it here. I'm sure we'll come back to you again. That's Dr. Franklin Esiedu-Bekwai, the Director of Public Health Service at the Ghana Health Service, speaking to us. Let's move away from health now.
And head straight to the courts, where lawyers for Solomon Asamoah, former CEO of the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund, and Professor Christopher Ameyawe-Kumfi, its board chair, have requested the High Court to modify their clients' bail conditions, particularly the requirement to report to investigators. The two face multiple charges, including willfully causing financial loss to the state and intentional dissipation of public funds linked to the failed $2 million Accra SkyTrain project. Both have pleaded not guilty and were granted bail. Asamoah at 15 million cedis with 2 sureties and Kumfi at 10 million cedis with 2 sureties. Lord Edu Asare is our court correspondent who sat through proceedings today. Lord, talk to us about why they have a concern about reporting to investigators as part of the bail conditions.
Right, Kemini. So the original order of the day, or the business of the day, was the case management conference. But when the case was called, lawyers for both accused persons noted to the court that they had been filed with the disclosures by the prosecution, and then indicated that the documents or the disclosures that had been filed were very bulky, and so they needed more time to peruse the disclosures and the witness statements and see if there would be a possibility to request for additional documents from the prosecution. Now, you'd also recall that the former chief executive of GIIF, Solomon Asamoah, he was granted a bail of 15 million with 2 sureties and then supposed to report to the police 3 times a week, while Professor Ekumfi was granted 10 million bail with 2 sureties and then to report to the police once a week. Now, the lawyers indicated that they made an oral prayer actually to vary the bail terms. They couldn't get into the details because at that point the presiding judge in the matter, Comfort Tasiame, asked them to make a formal application, file the application requesting the variation of the bail conditions. They also requested for more time, and so they were given an additional 2 weeks to peruse the disclosures which have been filed by the prosecution. And so the case has been adjourned to June 24 for them to go through the disclosures and the witness statements and then see if they'll request for additional disclosures from the prosecution and then make the formal application for the variation of the bail terms. They are yet to know what the review they are asking for, whether they want Prof. Ekumfi not to report to the police at all or otherwise. Same goes to Solomon Asamoah, who is to report 3 times a week, whether they want to reduce to a lesser reporting time. And then, Kemini, you recall that Charles Bishu, the former secretary of the Interministerial Committee on Illegal Mining, he was also in court today. And in his case, you recall that at the last time we were in court, last week, the second accused person, Andy Owusu, the former aide of the NP Ashanti Regional Chair, he was convicted on his own plea after getting into a plea bargain with the prosecution. Again, today we were supposed to go for the case management conference, but when we came, we realized that Charles Bishu had changed his lawyer. It was a different lawyer who was representing him this time around. The former lawyer was Kofi Usubuatin, but this time around we realized that veteran lawyer Augustine Obour, he was now representing Charles Bishu, and so he prayed the court for more time to go through the disclosures that had been filed by the prosecution. And so, again, the case was adjourned to June 16 for the case management.
Thank you so much for reporting. Lord Edu Asare is our court correspondent. Now, we'll turn attention to other issues because These group of men left Ghana with dreams of better lives but found themselves on the front lines of a foreign war. In a trapped-in war, Godwin Asedeba uncovers the perilous journeys of young Ghanaian men deceived into fighting the Russian-Ukraine war. Some returned wounded, others never made it at all. Families wait desperate for answers. It premieres on Wednesday, June 11th at 9 p.m. Here are SFs.
I saw my friends dying. If they see you are in pain, all what they can do to help you is, if it's your hand, they will cut it. If it's your leg, they will cut it. Then they will give you artificial. I'm half human being. All of my teeth, they are all artificials.
Another day in Ukraine, a place where fear is felt in every corner, where the sound of gunfire is a daily reminder of a war that never seems to end. But for some Ghanaian men, this is not just a battlefield. This is a nightmare they cannot wake up from. 14 young men, you can remember, left Ghana in 2024, tricked into believing they were coming to Russia for well-paying jobs. Instead, they were sent here to the front lines of one of the deadliest conflicts in the world, which is between Russia and Ukraine.
Start sending some messages that he's not comfortable at the camp, so he wants to leave. He tried to escape, but they arrested him, so they sent him back. From there, we have never heard anything from him. He made a video call. He told him that he was shot. He said his leg. So we have never heard from him since then, until I had a call around this time, exactly 7 p.m. that one man called that his immigration officer. He said, "Do you know somebody in Russia called Chiremen?" And I said, "Yeah." "And have you heard that that guy has passed on?" And I said, "No."
It was a mebusam man said, "Papa, I will be unfamous." I said, "I'm a problem."
Remember, the full interview airs tomorrow, Wednesday, June 11th at 9 p.m. I'm Kemenia Mano, and we'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll bring you some more stories. Don't go away.
Welcome back to News Central. And today on By the Numbers, we're asking a very simple question. It's one that's been an ongoing debate for quite a while. E-levy versus the new energy sector recovery levy, also been labeled as Dumsor levy, which has greater impact on Ghanaians. The debate over which levy places a heavier burden on the Ghanaian people, the controversial E-levy or the newly introduced energy sector recovery levy, popularly known now as Dumsor levy, has taken center stage over national discourse for quite a while. Yesterday, the minority were addressing a news conference about it. And so this issue has very well sparked some debate, particularly between the opposition, NPP, and the governing National Democratic Congress. Today on By the Numbers, we break it all down, and we're doing a cost-benefit analysis to help settle the debate with clear data and real impact. But before we do that, or we get into the numbers crunching, let's hear from Minister for Government Communications, Felix Kwashiorfor, as he defended the policy on the floor of the House. Then we'll hear as well from Kojo Nkrumah, who also vociferously yesterday led that news conference as addressed by the minority, amongst many other things. Let's hear from Kojo Nkrumah first, and then we'll hear from Felix Kwashiorfor.
About the levy, that because the people of Ghana didn't get an opportunity to have a full discussion on it, have come up and we think we need to draw your attention to. First is the rate that is being charged. Ghanaians will bear witness that this levy is being charged at a rate of 8% per transaction. 8% per transaction. And this makes it one of the highest tax rates introduced in Ghana in a single instance. If you
see this as debt to us when we took over, this has become a huge difficulty. And the minister says that if this difficulty in the power sector was resolved by passing it on to consumers in that sector, it would mean a 50% increase in electricity tariffs.
That's Felix Kwashiorfor via Adum TV. Let's get onto the board right now and help you understand really where all of this is coming from, why there's such an intense debate. And so this is revenue impact. What both levies are expected, or were expected to draw in, because we now know that E-levy has been repealed. The electronic transaction levy raked in 4.3 billion cedis. The energy sector recovery levy, which is yet to be implemented, 5.7 billion. And that E-levy achieved a 32% efficiency rate, and we'll get into the whys a bit shortly for you as well. But just in terms of the impacts, there's been different analysis made as to what, if I'm sending 200 cedis, how much E-levy was I going to be paying as compared to the buying 200 cedis worth of fuel. Let's try and do that for you quickly. And so when you're buying 200 cedis worth of fuel, you'll be expecting to be paying between 13 and 15 cedis in terms of taxes, whereas on E-levy, that would have been around 3%. But there's a reason why there's been intense argument as to why perhaps the E-levy, amongst many other things, could have failed and the likes. Well, when E-levy was implemented in 2022, we know that it suffered a delayed start because, if you recall, there were heated debates in Parliament. That entire passage was taken to the Supreme Court as well. We're yet to hear the full details of that court particular hearing, but it resulted in a 35% decline in digital transactions from 2022 up until the repeal of the law. In fact, it's on record that after the law was repealed, we saw volumes of transaction increase after the repeal of E-levy. But when we look at the energy sector recovery levy, that is expected to have a 100% coverage. Why? Because fuel is essential. And so if we look at the population targets, E-levy was targeting persons who use digital payment platforms, which hovered around 60% of the population. This new levy is expected to touch everybody, and we'll explain why, because fuel is one thing that is inputted into the cost of pretty much everything here in this country. But let's go back to the years and compare the years when these taxes were introduced, because in 2025 is when we're seeing this particular tax. That's the amendments to the energy sector levy, which has seen it move from 95 pesos to 195 pesos, which is 1 cedi 95 pesos. But in 2022, as at the time E-levy was being introduced, this is where inflation stood at 31.7%, one of the all-time highs in the Fourth Republican Constitution and our dispensation. The exchange rate between the cedi and the dollar, 13.1010 to the dollar, and fuel prices were at 17 cedis 99 pesos at the time E-levy was introduced. And so the economy in 2022 was one that was quite constrained, and so the government needed to find excess revenue to ensure that they could keep things afloat. Whereas in this time period, we're seeing some disinflation. Inflation currently has dropped from the record highs of 2022, was now at 18.4%, as was disclosed by the new government statistician for the month of May. The dollar-cedi ratio, we know the cedi has improved greatly. 10.3 is what the central bank is providing. And then fuel prices are hovering at 10.99%. Unfortunately, we have to bring all of this analysis to a brief end. But if you look at it, the difference is quite stark. It does appear that there will be some high impact when we look at this new levy that's been introduced. It's already existing levy. That's what we must tell Ghanaians. It's only been amended to increase the amounts that will be collected. As at now, we know that fuel prices are on the low, and that's why the government continues to make the argument that you will not immediately feel it. But
well, we'll see how it goes on June 16th, right?
Yeah, that's a new implementation date, and I think it will coincide with the second pricing window as well of this month. And so we'll see whether it will cross it will go back to 11, 12, 13. We'll see where fuel prices will stand.
Anyway, it's time for us to go. Thank you so much for your company. Next is the afternoon show. I'm Kemini Amano.
And I am Mawena Egbeta. Many thanks for watching.
Bye-bye.